Good afternoon, CLA family, friends, colleagues, and community partners. Welcome back to our live stream. It's our sincere hope that you continue to stay safe and healthy during this time. Today, we have two new faces on our live stream to help us understand what the fall might look like for students going back to college. Don Loberg is with us, and he leads our higher education practice at CLA for the firm, and President Gee, who is the president of West Virginia University. They'll be dialoguing about issues on the top of our minds related to colleges reopening in the fall semester. Welcome, Don and President Gee.
Thank you.
Before we get started with the higher education discussion, we have also brought Jack back with an update on the latest on PPP. Hey, Jack, how are you?
Hey, Jen, how you doing today?
Very well, thanks. Jack, it's great to have you back. Could you please update us on some of what's happened since last time we talked?
Sure. Yeah, there really hasn't been any new formal developments, but the U.S. House did have their Small Business Committee hearings last week, where Secretary Mnuchin and Administrator Carranza presented it for about 2.5 hours of questioning to the House committee members. And we did get a few insights coming out of that meeting. First of all, the forgiveness portal that the SBA is creating. We did get a time frame on that, and so Administrator Carranza did indicate that that was supposed to come online sometime very soon, being described as sometime early in August. So that kind of sets an expectation now of when people will be able to start submitting loan forgiveness applications to the banks, and then the banks will be able to forward them on to the SBA. We also got some insight into what's going to happen in the future of the PPP program. As many of you know, there's still over $120 billion of unallocated funds in that program. And so there was a lot of questioning about what the Treasury would support moving forward. There is broad-based support, both Democrat and Republican alike, and Treasury support for an extension of that program, potentially even adding more funds to it. And it appears that it's going to be very targeted, so to those companies that are hardest hit. And so they've defined that to some degree by companies that have seen revenue declines. Now, in some cases, they're talking about maybe 50% or more in revenue declines. On some of the other proposals, we've seen as little as 20 to 25% revenue declines to be able to participate in these programs. They are also targeting smaller businesses with set-asides potentially for women and minority-owned businesses, but really looking at companies with 100 or fewer employees. So that might be what the next generation of PPP program looks like out there that would get extended after the August 8th deadline. We also did get a little insight into the whole question about blanket forgiveness. We've heard this talked about in the past. Everybody is kind of targeting everything under $150,000 loan potentially being forgiven. I think there seemed to be broad-based support for that. Secretary Mnuchin also seemed to support it, but he did have some reservations about just saying you can walk away from everything under 150,000 because of fraud and other things like that. So I would expect there's going to be some kind of compromise there where maybe it is forgiveness, but with some level of reporting around how you spent the funds to make sure the funds were spent like they were supposed to be spent. A lot of other discussions in that committee meeting that go beyond PPP. The only other one I'll mention now is the EIDL program. There was a lot of questioning directed at Administrator Carranza for that one. They are really pushing for her to increase the limits of the loan size on the EIDL program. Currently, many of you know that those limits were decreased from $2 million down to $150,000. She did talk about potentially increasing those to $250,000, but did give an interesting fact that said 99% of the loans that have been granted right now have been for less than $150,000. So the cap that they put on the loan amount at 150 really has impacted a very small amount of folks that have applied for EIDL loans. So those were some of the highlights. There's going to be a lot of discussion over the next 2 to 3 weeks in advance of the April 7th recess by the House. And so there's going to be a lot of activity and a lot more to come out over that 2.5 week period of time that will support the next round of COVID relief legislation. So that's what I've got for you, Jen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jack. We already have a few questions coming into the inbox, so depending on how time flows, if we could keep you on, we'd love to bring you back.
Sure.
Speaking of the Livestream inbox, it continues to be open for your questions at livestream@claconnect.com. Please send your questions there during the session and we'll answer them as they come, assuming we can. You may also reach out to us for current information and answers to frequently asked questions at claconnect.com on our COVID landing page. And feel free to utilize our Contact Us button if you have more specific questions that want some deeper consultation. We're here to help in any way we can. Now that we've got everything going and our housekeeping covered, I'd like to pass the mic to Don to give a more personal introduction of President Gee and to get the conversation started about something that I know I'm very personally interested in, which is what back to school is going to look like for college students in the fall. So Don, thanks so much for joining us and for bringing in our special guest today.
Thanks a lot. Well, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. E. Gordon Gee. Dr. Gee is the president of West Virginia University. He has been a president, hopefully I'm not embarrassing you, President Gee. He's been a president for 40 years of a university or college. I don't know if there's many of those out there, but I'll tell you, you started your career, I did not know this, you started your career as an assistant to the Court of Appeals and ascended to working with the U.S. Supreme Court, and you're a staff assistant with Warren Burger. I had no idea about that. That was kind of a cool fact. But you've been a university president at the who's who of colleges. Let me just name a few of them: University of Colorado, Brown University, Vanderbilt University, and I don't know why they put the in front of it, but the Ohio State University, and of course where you're at right now, West Virginia University, where you started your presidency. 40 years. And what kind of blew me away was in 2009, Time Magazine named you one of the top 10 university presidents in the country, and I think you're still there. So what a fabulous amount of information. I could go on and on. This could take up the rest of our time when I looked at your bio. So bottom line, I can't take the rest of the time. And if people want to read President Gee's bio, go to the West Virginia University's website. It's a fabulous story. So I'm honored to have you, and CLA is honored to have you with us, President Gee. And quite frankly, welcome to our streamline. And we're really excited to hear what you have to say. So I'm just going to ask you a question before I turn it over to you. You've been a president for 40 years. Have you ever seen anything like COVID-19 in your history?
Yeah, and as you noted, I've been president of two universities twice, the Ohio State University and this one, and I actually had retired. I was from Ohio State, and then they called me up and asked me if I'd come back for 6 months to help a transition at West Virginia. I said I'd be happy to do that. That was 6.5 years ago, and the reason I'm saying that is the fact that in all of my time, I've experienced pestilence. I've experienced people taking over my office. I've experienced winning national championships and losing national championships in football and basketball, but I've never experienced a pandemic. And I think the good Lord really brought this back on me. I said, this guy deserves a good left hook. And so I tell everyone that I feel like a small boy. I feel like a freshman walking a picket fence. I'm thrilled but in danger of being impaled because I have no way to know how to work this through a keyhole other than common sense. And the other thing about it is, which is very interesting, because everyone around me, very smart people and very savvy, but they haven't seen this nor a number of other things. And so not only do I have to keep my own panic in tow, but I have to keep, I feel like I've turned into being a therapist more than anything else. But, think about it. So this institution is about 35,000 students, people from 55 counties in this state, small state. 50 states are represented, 120 countries, people from all over the world. We have a huge academic medical center. We have research going on in all flung in parts of the world. We run the largest hotels in the state of West Virginia called Residence Halls. We run the largest restaurants called eating establishments within them. So everything we do, in fact, on Saturday afternoon, our football stadium is the largest city in West Virginia. So planning for this kind of an event has been very challenging because of the complexity of what we are. If we just made cars or something like that, I shouldn't say just made cars. You can shut down a factory or whatever, but shutting down your hospitals, your research programs, all of those were not easy. So what we're going to do is what we did do, first of all, is we turned on a dime. We had all these kids here doing wonderful things, and turned on a dime and sent them all home and started teaching them online. And the way that I think about it, so if I were a military planner, I'd say, well, in 10 years you're going to be doing this or that. Well, what happened is whatever was going to happen 10 years ago has happened in 10 weeks. We have totally accelerated the whole change process. And for universities, that is very challenging because of just the nature of the world we're in, but also the fact that change is not a happy word in universities. Our history goes back to 1200, the year, when Bologna, the University of Bologna, was established, and universities and the Catholic Church are the two institutions that have very rarely changed, and now here we're having to deal with this, and I consider it a great blessing, and I actually consider it an immense opportunity because I think that you need to have an outside force, an outside catalyst to bring about the kind of positive change that is necessary. So we're totally thinking about the teaching and learning process. We're totally thinking about how we reward people. We're totally realizing that, for example, we don't need to have all these people on campus. I hate to admit it, and I hope no one here who is on the board of governors of the university is listening to this, but I actually am much more effective and efficient doing what I'm doing right now. I miss the human contact. Mm-hmm. I don't have the opportunity to reach into people's back pockets and steal their money quite as fast as I can when I'm fundraising. But nonetheless, it's there's a lot that we are learning from this. Forced learning and forcing change. So the question is, do we come back on campus? About 65% of the universities in this country are determined to come back for two reasons. One is that a good portion of them, if they don't return, will just simply not survive. And you know this, Don, that there are so many of these smaller institutions that have overextended. They're living on the edge, and it's hand-to-mouth existence. I hate that because the diversity of the American higher education system is its greatest strength. But I think that within the next 2 or 3 years, we'll lose about 1,000 colleges and universities because of this pandemic and because of the fact that the model broke itself right in the middle of this. That's number one. Number two is the second reason, which is very compelling to me, is the fact that we know the results of the pandemic. It's a hammer and a dance. We hammered ourselves, we shut everything down. And then we open back up, and now it's coming back again. Well, this time around, if we shut everything down again, we'll spiral into a very serious depression, I think. So we can't do that. So the question is, how do we learn to dance with this thing? And so I think of it as the hammer and the dance. And now we as university leaders have to learn how to dance with this thing. Our students do not feel vulnerable, you know, and I don't mean this, well, probably sound a little cruel when I say it, but you know, the 140,000 people who died, 90% of them were at the train station anyway. You know, they were getting ready to leave, and a vast number of them were in nursing homes, and these 18 to 22-year-olds, they do get it. Most of them are carriers. I talked to a couple of them the other day who had it. They didn't even know they had it, other than one of them said, I had, you know, I was a little sore. And so they don't feel vulnerable, but yet it's me, the 76-year-old university president, so I say, be kind to me, be kind, you know, make certain that you don't infect me, otherwise I won't sign your diploma or something. But I think that that's where we are right now. It's this kind of dysfunction. But what I'm really concerned about is what I call the collateral damage. 10 years ago, about 5% of our students on university campuses in this country identified as having mental health problems. The number is now approaching 70%. There's a pandemic that we don't even understand, which is called loneliness, which is called suicide, which is called drug abuse, which is called a number of other things that go to the mental health and the capacity of students. I talked to a father 2 days ago. His son committed suicide. Suicides are way up. His son committed suicide. I said, why? I said, why do you think that is? And he said, he died of loneliness. People, these kids are these students, all of us are social animals. And you know, as I talk to parents, they want them out of their basement. They're tired of having their kids in their basement, and kids are tired of being there. So when they gather together, they don't feel vulnerable. They start this spread. So, you know, so we're trying to figure out how to control it, and we're doing it in a number of different ways. Distancing, requiring people to wear masks, expecting our students to act as adults, and I think that they will, mainly because I think that they are frightened of this thing in some way or other too. And so, but a lot of our courses will be online right now. We'll have this thing that we call a hybrid model, some portion online, some portion in person. In a college town like Morgantown, West Virginia, if we said we're going to shut down and go online, they'd all still be here anyway. They love to come. They love the social contact. They're going to be in this town no matter what. So, you know, so I got the governor to shut down the bars. I'm a devout Mormon, never had a drop of alcohol, so it was easy for me to do that. Although I love to go to the bars and visit with the students, so I'm going to be really in sad shape this fall. But you know, the kind of things that we can control, we're trying to control. We hope to play football. You know, as a member of one of the Power 5 conferences, we hope to play football as a spiritual issue for West Virginia. For West Virginians, you know, it's a cathedral and it's a spiritual issue. And by that, I mean, we need to get back to some form of normalcy at the same time dancing. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Interesting. In talking to other university presidents and understanding what they're worried about and talking about, I think you hit the nail on the head, using the hammer as a picture. It is tough because you've got young kids, you've got older professors too. Talk to us about how you're handling that. You've got, you know, in the university and college world, and all of us, a lot of us have been to college, the vast majority, and everybody can tout the 80 or 90-year-old professor they took a class with. Talk to us about the professors and who's going to be teaching.
Well, you know, that of course is an immense challenge. As I said, you know, the invulnerability of the younger in their own mind, and then there's people like me. Well, you know, we have put together a tremendous number of protocols. We're testing everyone. In fact, we're testing all of our faculty and staff right now. We have big test centers set up, and then we have 2 or 3 different apps. But one of our own at the Rockefeller Neuroscience Institute, which is one of the really forward-thinking institutes in this country, they've come up with an app that can predict. See, I'm wearing this ring right now, and it predicts whether or not you're going to come down with the virus. And so we're buying them for all of our faculty and for our staff, so they can have kind of an early warning system. So we're doing, technology is starting to catch up with this disease too. We've got therapeutics that are very helpful. I mean, go figure. They finally discovered after a number of these people had died that if they had turned them over and let them rest on their front side instead of on their back side, they'd be fine. We're discovering how to dance with the disease, as I say. There are 4 to 5 different vaccines that are ready to come in. All of them are very their protocols are working out very well. So there are a number of things. So we're dealing with the keyhole right now. But it's those 40, 50, 60-year-old people, and so we're trying to reassure them. I tell you one thing that I'm doing. I believe in what we're doing. So I called up our honors program and said, I'm going to teach a first-year honors class in person. And he said, you're too old. I said, no, I'm not. Hell, I run the damn university. I'm going to, if I want to, you let me do it. So anyway, so I'm going to teach one. It's kind of like the captain going down with the ship. If you hear of me going down, you'll know that I went down cheerfully, though. But I just think we need to get, fear is our greatest. Fear is our greatest problem, anyways. This is a fearful disease. I do not underestimate that, but much of what we're doing is fear driven, and we've got to get a grip. I think that's the only way that I can think about it.
Well, in talking about fear, I've got a son. He's a junior in college, and when this whole thing hit, he turned to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I really don't want to go online, and I would really, I'm starting to consider doing a gap year." And as a parent, I sat back and go, "That's great. I really want you in my basement playing video games, Fortnite, whatever you play during a year." Talk to us about that, because I know in the university setting, there is that fear that students are going to take that year off or that semester off. And I know what happens then.
Well, I would encourage anyone to take some time off if they're going to do it productively, but if they just do it to harass their parents and cause mayhem in basements across this country, then we need to think differently about it. And by the way, one of the things we've had, this is the basement issue. This is kind of an aside. You really got me going here, Don. But anyway, one of the things that has resulted from 21-year-olds now, that's the drinking age. When it moved from, so I've been around so long, as I tell everyone, I was at Lincoln's inauguration. But anyway,
he's a very nice man.
Yeah, he was. He was tall. So when 18-year-olds came and they could drink on campus, again, remember, I don't drink because of a number of things, but we could control it. We kind of had a way to control it. Now it's the 21-year-olds, and because of that, we've created a binge drinking culture, and that's been one of the major issues. So these kids say, "Listen, if I come away to college, I'm going to drink," and so they hide in their basements, in their residence halls, they binge drink, and by the time they go out, they are in very serious problems of alcohol abuse. So again, it's all of that stuff. You don't want, gap years are fine if they're going to gap, but if they're going to goof off, then it is not healthy for either them or for the university.
Yeah. I've got a little tougher question. Greek life, student life. I went to college right after a great movie by a man by the name of Belushi was out, Animal House, and that was perceived the norm for college. And I think my son probably thought that too until he got there. But what about student life? Talk to us about student life. If we're worried about and fearful about a lot of stuff, what happens with the student life on campus?
Well, how does one socially distance and still have some kind of a social context in which we're operating. How do we do it online? I think that, and that's the reason I say that's the collateral damage. But yet we would be highly irresponsible if we just said, "You all come. We'll just do everything the same way. We'll have stadium concerts, all the other kinds of things that I'm used to." You know, I mean, that I'm used to as university president. One of the things I really enjoy, I enjoy commencements, but we didn't have one because of the fact that they're all gathered together. And I enjoy the beginning of school, helping parents move in, supervising parents moving in now, but those other kinds of things. And so we're doing a number of things to make sure that we're creating pods of connectivity. And I know that sounds very esoteric, but no, kids can, and even if some of our things if they're going to be online, if they're going to come back, then let's figure out ways for us to get them connected with each other, but doing it in a way that's responsible. And by the way, I have great faith in our students. I always tell this story that when I was at Vanderbilt, when I came, I received about 1,000 emails almost immediately. The university is draconian. They beat up on us all the time. Well, it was because of the fact that they had a very tough alcohol policy. And kids were very unhappy about it. And so I called in the heads of the fraternities, sororities, the number of the student leaders. I said, I tell you what, because we all live here on this campus together, you design the policy and you enforce it, and I'll look the other way. I can now do it. Well, guess what? They designed a policy, they enforced it, never had another complaint. They did a brilliant job with it because they were the adults and they had the responsibility. And interestingly enough, their policy was more stringent than the university's policy, but it was their policy. And it took me 20 years to figure out that if you treat students like adults, that they're going to act like it. And I just did this thing today. So we have all these rules. You can't do this, you can't do that. And so I did this. It's what I call it a email to send out to our students. And I said, hey, look, we love you. We appreciate you. And just understand that these rules are not meant to be broken. You can set up your own rules, but just please be kind. This is an act of kindness you're engaged in right now.
Yeah, that's excellent. I've got to get to sports. Otherwise I'd be remiss. First of all, I heard a quote. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard a quote. You're absolutely going to have football, and if it took you to put pads on, you would do it.
Yeah,
so my question is, what's your big position?
Well,
are you a wide out?
I'm 76. I'm 5'6", and I'm 150 pounds. I'm a fearsome football player. You can imagine. I mean, someone would hit me, and that'd be the end. I'd be on that train. I can tell you that much right now. But I mean, I'm very hopeful. We're working very hard at it to create an environment. It's going to be so much different. I mean, we may all be watching college football from our homes, but obviously we're very concerned about the safety of our students. We test them about every other day. We quarantine them. We do a variety of other things, but they want to play, and they want to be in school. I mean, they want to do things that bring some sense of normalcy back to their life. So it's our job to work with them to create that kind of balance that I think is very important. I think for the psyche of the country, we're fighting four things right now. We've got the pandemic, which is the unseen virus. We've got the virus of structural racism, and I do believe that it does exist, and we have to just deal with it. We've got to finally get out of the business of thinking about it and dealing with it, but it has to be done in a very forthright way, so that we all feel like we're compelled. We can't have people fearful of saying things that may be disagreeable with others. The First Amendment needs to be preserved. The third thing, of course, is we have all these kind of issues of how do we structure our life based upon this pandemic. And then the fourth And the fourth challenge we have is we live in a toxic political environment. I mean, the very fact that we have politicized this pandemic is the dumbest damn thing I've ever seen in my life. Why would someone say that you're macho if you don't wear your mask, or you're a Republican if you don't, or you're a Democrat if you do, or you're a, I mean, what in hell's sake are we doing as a nation? We've got to weave ourselves back into some sense of common sense and community. And I think that is really the challenge that we've all faced, but certainly the challenge that the university faces.
Yeah, one more question. And we've got a lot of business leaders out there, and I've had enough information brought to me that there are students that graduated last spring that lost internships, or students that were juniors, sophomores losing internships. People have rescinded job offers. And now we're going to go to another cycle of individuals that are going to graduate. Do you have any advice for us as corporate leaders on hiring, how to hire, and what we should be thinking about in the whole practice of building our employees?
Yeah, I think that as I say, this is a time of change and the value added, and I think that we need to do that. First of all, universities need to get out of being the ivory tower and into being the helping hand. Partnerships with business, industry, others, and government. And by that I mean we need to turn to those people who are hiring our folks and say, what do you need? What do you need? You know what? By the way, it makes sense to me that we would train people to what your needs are, rather than what we are going to tell you. The arrogance of universities telling you this is what you guys need to do. By the way, that just doesn't work very well. So number one. Number two is the fact that in this particular time, we still have to make sure that we're creating appropriate kinds of pipelines and relationships. We will as a nation recover. I have great confidence in our abilities and our democracy, but in the meantime, we can't lose a generation of people. So we've got to really determine some things as business leaders that you're doing to think more immediate. I've sat on a number of corporate boards, and the thing that always drove me crazy about these big boards that I sat on, I was very privileged, is the fact that we'd always be driving toward the next quarter and reporting. I still remember sitting in a conversation that I was having in China, and the guy and they started talking about their 100-year plan. I thought, 100-year plan? We have a 100-day plan, and it doesn't work very well. I mean, we've got to learn as corporate America to start thinking much more strategically. So Wall Street does us, a great disservice by this kind of quarterly, what are you doing? And U.S. News and World Report does us a great disservice in universities by saying this is the ranking, and so rankings create mediocrity instead of excellence, and because everyone is driving toward looking the same rather than differentiating. So that's sort of where I think we are at the moment.
Well, I appreciate the time and all of the insight. Your wisdom goes way further and deeper than I could ever provide. So I appreciate the time. I know you're busy, and have fun with your family, and be safe. Love to see you in a month or so.
Yeah, and make certain we get a clean audit, please.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm saying nice things is I want a clean audit.
That's awesome. Well, Jen, I'm going to turn it back to you before he starts forcing me into other things.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Don, thank you so much. President Gee, thank you so much. I tell you, with the child going back to college in the next 2 weeks, these questions have been really weighing on me, and your insights have been, as Don said, incredibly valuable and helpful. So thank you for that today. If you in the audience have any additional questions for President Gee or for Don or anyone in our higher education group, please feel free to email us at livestream@claconnect.com, and we'll route those appropriately. We're excited to have you join us too for any deeper dive sessions into this. There is a Higher Education 2020 Summit Series going on, so please log in to claconnect.com for more information on that and just follow the tabs to get that information. As always, feel free to contact us for more specific consultation on any of the needs that you have. If you're a subscriber to our emails, you will get invitations to these events, as well as demonstrations and tips and tricks for various tools related to PPP forgiveness and other information that we have out there to help you with your planning during this time. So next week, we'll be back with Leslie discussing healthcare and some of the experiences that may be relevant to you when you go to the doctor, or if you know of anyone living in assisted living and how that might feel, along with some PPP updates. So please tune in next week on Thursday. And until then, have a wonderful weekend and please stay safe and healthy. Thanks.